Hello there, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as Ledev, and I'm here to provide the deck text for you for a really weird deck that was kinda hard to brew. What I tried to do is do a Grixis electric tempo using Electro Dominance, and my original iteration of the deck was more of a tapped out control deck using stuff like Fodder Erasure, Disinformation Campaign, and such like that category, and just mass removal spells and such to try to go for that route because I thought, oh, it would be cool to do Electro Dominance and then do a Federation at the end of the opponent's turn. That would be cool. And then flash in Nicol Bolas, which honestly is one of the main combos of the deck, using this to flash in Nicol Bolas to Ravager, but we'll get through each card eventually. What I came to the conclusion to, and thanks to the help with some friends who are more better control players, because at the heart, this deck is supposed to be a control deck, they kind of helped me alter the deck to be a lot more consistent, especially in a one-on-one arena meta, which it's very tricky to play a tapped-out control deck in an arena meta. It's not impossible, but tricky. But anyway, let's go through the deck. Anyway, what I have here is Ops. It's kind of your standard turn 1 play to just dig into your deck, draw a card and such to help you with tempo advantage and such. Just as a turn 1 play if you need to. Then we have Search for Azcantas, just honestly, just good way to dig into your deck more. Also flips into Ruins of Azcanta or Azcanta Ruins, I can't remember, but it's the one that you can spend 2 in a blue and tap the land to look at your deck and try to dig up for a spell, looking at the top 3 cards, I believe. It could be 4. I could be having a brain fart, but I'm pretty sure it's top 3. But still, really good card in your control decks. I have 2 of Cast Down to use as just your typical remove a creature that's problematic early game. Lava Coils to remove stuff like the Izzet Drake's decks that currently are popular in the meta. Quench, which, yes, we're a counter magic deck, so Quench is just a really good early game control spell. Just the factor that you can use as to counter a risk factor is nothing to sneeze at, especially so you don't have to get dealt the burn damage and such. Electro Dominance, which is the main key of the deck, which is Etz red. It deals Etz damage to any target. You may cast a card with converted mana cost Etz or Rest from your hand without paying its mana cost. Now, this is mostly for a cute combo with Nicol Bolas to Ravager, which essentially it's, oh, I can cast this for 6, deal 4 damage to something that's problematic, and summon Nicol Bolas. And, that's kind of the thing that people have been thinking with Electro Dominance. They've been thinking more in the realms of kind of like, oh, cute little plays of casting sorceries or enchantments at the end of the opponent's turn. And while we have some cute cards like Creatures, Planeswalkers, and Eldest Reborns that we would find interesting to cast at the end of the turn, mostly the secret power of this card that I think many people have not realized is there's just sometimes where you're spending the 2 extra grand and just casting this spell just to get a free burn spell with the instant spell that you usually want to cast at the end of someone's turn. Like, for example, Chemister's Insight. Classic, free in a green, draw 2 card. Or free in a blue. Wow, I am having brain fart city today. Free in a blue to draw 2 cards. There's just some circumstances where if you need to remove a Drake, just dealing 4 damage and drawing 2 cards, yes, it costs you 2 cards, don't get me wrong, but there are times where just doing that is just fine. Like, it's not the most flashiest thing in the world, but it works. Also, it's kind of a secret spell you can hide counter magic in, where mostly you say somebody doesn't want to play into your counter spell, so then they do that, they hold up the counter, but then they just cast their spell, waiting for you to counter it. You decide to do Electro Dominance, they let it through because they figured, oh, it's just a burn spell, it's not a counter spell, and then you cast a counter spell as the free spell. It's one of the more subtle interactions. It doesn't work all the time. Some people will just counter the counter spell or just counter the burn spell to cast you 2 cards for 1. But there are times where you can actually get away with that trick, which is kind of cute. As for that, we have Ionize as our free cost counter spell to deal 2 damage to spell's control, which we want to. We want to try to burn the opponent down a teeny little bit. That way, Electro Dominance could be used as a finisher if necessary. Then we have Vraska's Contempt, just typically late game removal / remove annoying planeswalkers, as well as Bedevil, which Bedevil is pretty versatile. It's a card that can remove problematic planeswalkers, artifacts, or creatures. Enough said on that. Plus, gorgeous Sed McKinnon art. Also, Chemister's Insight, as I mentioned before, it's just a good card draw engine, especially since you can recast it in your graveyard to draw more cards. Angrath's in here as just a good controlled planeswalker, just being able to hate out the opponent's hand, make them discard it little by little by little, and try to make it where the hand's empty, is very synergistic with Discovery and Dispersal. Which, as people know, Discovery is mostly the popular side that people like to use to cast it, where you just surveil 2 and then draw a card. But Dispersal is a very powerful instant ability, because if you're using Angrath and countering and pretty much making their hand very, very reduced, there are times where you don't have a Bedevil or an Ionize or a Counterspell in your hand and your opponent plays a Teferi with their hand empty, and you can just use that opportunity to, when they go to activate the draw card, cast Dispersal. Teferi is the highest cost permanent on they control. They bounce the Teferi, and then the Teferi goes into their graveyard since they have to discard it since it's the only card in their hand. Very powerful. Also, Eldest Reborn, mostly used here just to remove some very problematic creatures and such, like Planeswalkers, and also just Hexproof creatures. Is it Viceroy? It's just a good card draw engine in general, and if you do get away with its ultimate, it's really good. Plus, it's -4 because it's a good removal spell. We have 2 expansion explosions in here that both work as a way to, if we need to, use the expansion side to copy a spell that we think we might need to benefit from, like maybe copying a lava coil, for example, to take out 2 creatures and such. And expansion, or explosion, is obviously the deal a lot of damage, draw cards to try to restock your hand and such. One interesting note to keep in mind with Electro Dominance in cards like Discovery, Dispersal, or Expansion and Explosion, to make it where, at least in Arena, and I think it's legal ruling in Paper Magic, to make sure you can cast this card for free, you have to put, which is a weird thing, you would think like, oh, I could just cast Electro Dominance for 2 and then cast Discovery for free, right? Weirdly enough, not exactly. Actually, at least from what I've seen in the Arena meta, you have to either, and I still have to test this a little bit more, you either have to make sure that Electro Dominance for, let's say, Discovery Dispersal is at 7, so you can count both the converted mana costs of both sides of the card. It could also be that you just have to have it have 5, so it's just the highest cost spell. It's a really weird interaction. It's probably something in the rolling that I don't notice right off the bat, but it is one of those weird interactions to keep in the back of your head, just in case if you want to cast, like, remove a problematic creature, and then there's a second problematic permanent, and then you use Dispersal as your free spell and such. Something to keep in the back of your head. Also, you might notice that I decided to, well, first, let's get to the lands real quick. We're running just your typical, kind of like Grixis land base in this case. We're running Arch as our card draw engine. 1 copy of Blood Crypt, because we have 4 copies of Steam Vents and 4 copies of Watery Grave. We don't really want to go crazy on Blood Crypts, because you don't want to go crazy on the tap land, or the shock lands, especially with Burn being one of the popular archetypes in the meta. But we just have also just our check lands, such as Dragon Skull Summits as a free of, Drowned Catacomb as a free of, and Sulphur Falls as a free of. Then we also have Free Field of Ruins, which can either be used, as I see it, 2 ways. It's either going to be used as a way to remove a problematic land that the opponent controls, or try to, if they're a multicolored deck as well, destroy their Fitzing. Or there's just sometimes where you're playing like Kimster's Insight and you need to discard a card. You can just discard a Field of Ruin if it's a monocolored deck and you are fine with it. Then we're just also running 2 islands, 1 mountain, 1 swamp for just basic land Fitzing, such as so we can dig it off with Field of Ruin when we destroy. And then our sideboard is 1 Argyl's Bloodfast. Just a typical, if we know we're in a control matchup where we need to draw more cards, we can use it to draw more cards. Moment of Cravings, just if we know we're going against aggro, we could just splash in Moment of Craving to replace Cast Down to gain a lot of, to hopefully get minimal life gain. Negate against the control matchups, sometimes even against the burn matchups to try to negate, say, their risk factors, their experimental frenzies, etc., etc. Unmoored Ego, honestly, this is just here to hate out specific combo decks. Like, naming Unmoored Ego, the name, say, Nexus of Fate, is going to come in very handy, let's just say right off the bat. Drive the Carnarium, mostly just against, like, either Graveyard Shenanigans deck or token-based decks. Mass Manipulation, if I'm going against a control deck as well, I sometimes will sideboard this in, because you are going to get to the point where you're going to be at, say, 10 mana, usually, if you control really well, and being able to take essentially free permanents, which could either be very high power creatures or planeswalkers, is a very powerful ability. Also, Angrot the Flame Chain, just some extra ones just in case we need them if we're in the mostly heavy hand hate synergy aspect of the deck. We put in one more Eldest Reborn, and we put one Niv Mizzet. I might also change it where it's two Niv Mizzet and one Angraf. I'm trying to decide between the two, to be quite frankly honest. But Niv Mizzet, just your typical finisher in a control deck, like if you're going against a control matchup, just the factor that can't be countered, and the factor that when the opponent will cast spells, you can draw cards, and when you cast spells, you draw cards, which then can ping points of damage, is very, very good. But yeah, mostly though, this is a deck that, thanks to the modifications, I have to actually thank one of my friends, Christian Shu, who also does, like, tries his best to be a competitive Magic player and just do some competitive brews and such. And he is probably the better control player than me, so he kind of helped me, along with the store owner Sam, kind of alter this deck to make it still kind of more consistent within the arena meta. Also, if you want to know what app I'm using, I'm actually using the site AetherHub, which is kind of a really good site for if you want to work on brews and such. You can also simulate and all that stuff. Now, the reason why I'm doing it right now on here rather than showing it in Arena is because at the moment where I am going to show gameplay pretty soon of this deck in action, I've been having this weird glitch at the home where we have to fix our router where I can connect to the internet, but there will be periods where it disconnects. So then I have to reconnect it and such. You know, all the little glitches, technical internet issues. So it is kind of one of those I thought just to make sure that it doesn't disconnect while I'm showing off the deck in Arena. I figured I would show it off in essentially this and have it as its own kind of separate video and then show the gameplay video in kind of like a playlist, just as a little experiment. But overall, in the next video, you're going to see this deck in action, and, well, let's just say it helped me get up one gold rank, so I think there's some legs to this deck. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and hope you enjoyed the gameplay coming up. This is SlevDev, signing out.